The night was supposed to be one of unity, of joy, of tradition passed down through generations of wolves who gathered beneath the vaulted roof of the great ceremonial hall. But for Lyra, the blind Omega, it was nothing but suffocating shadows pressing in on every side. She stumbled forward, her fingers brushing against cold stone, her ears filled with the sound of cruel laughter that seemed to echo far louder than the drums that beat in the distance. The floor trembled beneath her steps, not because of the earth, but because of the whispers, those sharp, cutting words spoken too low for the council to scold, yet loud enough to slice straight through her chest. Look at her, does she even know where she's walking? Blind little burden, what business does she have here? She's cursed. Mark my words, no alpha should ever let her near. Lyra tried to steady her breath, but the air itself betrayed her. It was thick with the sense of dominance, heavy with the clashing auras of betas and ranked wolves crowding the chamber. To anyone else, it might have smelled of pine oil, of incense, of polished stone, but to her, it was like breathing through smoke. Her heightened senses, sharpened by the very blindness they mocked, told her too much. The tang of sweat from nervous Omegas, the rich musk of alphas eager to flaunt their power, the bitterness of fear wafting from wolves who knew they would never be chosen tonight. She wanted to disappear, to fold herself into silence. But the cruel shoves against her shoulder told another story. They had seen her stumble, and now they wanted sport. Don't let her trip into the wine again, someone sneered. The memory burned fresh in her mind. Another ceremony, another humiliation, when she'd knocked over a table she hadn't seen, and the whole hall had erupted in laughter. Tonight, it seemed they wanted a repeat performance. Her pulse hammered, but she lifted her chin. Blind eyes or not, she refused to bow to them. She couldn't see their faces, but she could hear the hunger in their whispers, could feel their malice in the way silence swelled and broke like waves against her skin. And then it happened. Her searching hand found the edge of a seat. Smooth wood, polished, carved with symbols she didn't recognize. She eased herself down before she could lose her balance again, relief flooding through her aching legs. For a heartbeat, she let herself believe she had escaped notice. Then silence crashed down around her. It wasn't the silence of mercy. It was the silence of shock. Gasps echoed like wind rushing through trees. The air grew colder. Even her unseeing eyes could feel the weight of 100 stares. She had sat where she should not. Beside the throne. The seat reserved only for the Alpha King. Lyra's heart stopped. Her breath locked in her chest as realization clawed its way into her bones. She had not chosen a place among the Omegas at the far end of the hall, nor the benches where lower-ranked wolves sat in anonymity. No. Her blindness, her curse, had guided her trembling hand straight to the place of highest honor, the seat beside the throne itself. And in that instant, she became prey. The whispers turned venomous. Unthinkable. An Omega at the king's side? This is mockery. She defiles the ceremony. The scrape of boots echoed. Guards moving toward her. Heavy, armored steps. The air shifted as spears tilted, as claws unsheathed. Their growls rattled through the chamber. Elders' voices rose, cracking like thunder. Remove her at once. She is a disgrace. Blindness is bad enough, but this insult cannot stand. Lyra's hands shook against the carved armrest. Her throat tightened. Fear swallowed her, but something deep inside her, a part she buried long ago, refused to let her crumble in front of them. She sat straighter, though her knees begged her to collapse. Her chest heaved, though her lungs burned for air. She whispered inwardly, to herself, to the part of her that still believed, "Don't cry. Not here. Not now. You've survived worse." Her mind flickered back, against her will, to the shadows of her childhood. She saw herself at 6 years old, standing outside the packhouse doors, begging to be let in, while the other pups laughed at her. She saw her sister, beautiful and whole, pushing her down into the mud with a voice as sweet as honey, but as sharp as broken glass. "Stay down, Lyra. No one wants a blind Omega on their side." She heard the cruel laughter when her first mate bond rejected her before the ceremony even ended. No wolf wants to bind with the cursed one. She felt again the loneliness of nights spent at the edge of the forest, listening to the pack howl together while she remained silent, forgotten. All of it lived in her bones now, pressing against her skin as she sat in the forbidden chair, with guards ready to seize her. Her heartbeat pounded so loudly she could barely hear the world. But then she did hear it faint, subtle, the hush of breath held by every wolf in the room, waiting for the Alpha King to arrive and pass judgment. Her entire body trembled, but she whispered to herself again, a mantra born of survival, "They've broken me before. They won't break me tonight." The cold edge of a spear brushed her arm. She flinched. A guard growled low, waiting for the order to drag her across the floor like an animal. And in that suspended moment, between humiliation and punishment, something within her shifted. She was afraid, yes, but she was also defiant. If this is the end of me, let me go down sitting where they swore I never belonged. The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating, endless. And then, a whisper, low and steady, curling like smoke through the chamber. Before the Alpha's judgment falls, remember this moment. And if your heart is pounding as hers is now, if you feel the fire of her shame and her courage, then hear me. Subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Here, we live the stories that burn. The words linger like prophecy, like a secret vow spoken into the night. And then the great doors of the ceremonial hall creaked open. The Alpha King was coming. The great doors groaned as they opened, wood and iron straining under the weight of silence. The hall seemed to shiver, as if the stone itself recognized who was about to enter. A draft of cold night air swept in, carrying the scent of pine and iron, smoke and power. The wolves closest to the entrance lowered their eyes instinctively, the way prey lowers itself before the predator that rules the shadows. Alpha King Darius stepped across the threshold. Every breath in the room faltered. His presence was not noise, it was silence sharpened into a blade. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his movements measured like someone who knew the ground itself belonged to him. Scars traced faint lines along his jaw and throat, not hidden, not shamed, but worn like proof that he had survived what others could not. His aura pressed outward, an invisible storm. Dominance rolled from him in waves, settling over the hall like the weight of a mountain. It was not the wild, restless dominance of young alphas eager to prove themselves. No, his was colder, deeper, dangerous, because it did not need to shout. His power whispered, "You already know what I am capable of." And Lyra felt it, her body recognizing what her eyes could not. Her skin prickled, her heart stumbling into a rhythm it could not escape. Her breath hitched, and though she could not see the shadows bending toward him, she felt the way the air curved to his will. Guards straightened. Elders bowed. Vedas stilled. But his gaze, though she could not see it, found her immediately. The shift in the atmosphere told her. The pause, the subtle intake of breath, the sudden razor-sharp stillness in the crowd. His attention cut through every whisper, every sneer, and pinned her in place. Her fingers gripped the carved armrest of the forbidden chair. Her throat tightened. She braced for wrath, for the roar of judgment that would tear her down in front of them all. Instead, his voice broke the silence. "Stay where you are." The words were low, deliberate. Not loud, but they carried more weight than any shout. Guards froze mid-step. Elders swallowed their protests. The hall seemed to inhale and forget how to exhale. Lyra's heart lurched. She almost doubted she'd heard him right. But the air didn't move. No one dared disobey. Alpha, one of the counselors, began, voice trembling. Silence. That single word cracked through the chamber like lightning. And then, impossibly, he spoke her name. Lyra. Her chest seized. Shock raced through her veins. How could he know her? She was no one. Less than no one. The forgotten Omega, the blind girl shunted to the corners of ceremonies, mocked in whispers, dismissed as cursed. Yet here, in front of the pack, in front of every wolf who had ever spat her name like poison, the Alpha King spoke it with unsettling certainty. Every whisper stopped. The silence was suffocating, as though the whole pack had forgotten how to breathe. She froze. Her lips parted soundlessly. How? How could the Alpha know her name? The edges of the world blurred. Her mind screamed with disbelief, her pulse hammering against her ribs. She wanted to shrink, to vanish. And yet, there was something else beneath the terror. A flicker of something she didn't dare name. He took a step closer. The sound of his boots against stone was slow, deliberate. Each footfall resonated through the floor, through her bones. He did not rush. Predators never did. When he stopped, she felt the heat of his presence beside her. Too close. Too vast. "Remain seated," he said. Gasps ripped through the hall. An omega allowed beside the throne? The blasphemy of it cracked the air. Council voices broke the silence at last, rising with outrage. Unthinkable. An omega at the king's side? This cannot be allowed. She mocks our laws. Alpha, you must. Enough. His voice cut clean, colder than steel. She sat frozen, trembling, every nerve screaming. She wanted to rise, to flee, but his command pressed down upon her as surely as his aura. He hadn't just told her to stay, he had anchored her there. And for reasons she could not understand, she obeyed. Her fingers fumbled against the armrest, searching for something steady. And then his hand brushed hers. It was subtle, almost nothing. A whisper of skin against skin, whether by accident or intention, she didn't know. But the spark it unleashed ripped through her like a storm. Her breath caught. Heat surged beneath her skin, a violent shiver racing up her spine. Her heart stumbled, then raced, then refused to find its rhythm again. Bond. The word pulsed in the back of her mind. She tried to crush it, deny it, but her body betrayed her. Every inch of her recognized him, even if she could not see him. The air between them thickened, charged, a tether invisible yet undeniable. She snatched her hand back, her lungs aching, her chest too small to contain the surge inside her. Whispers erupted once more, but these were sharper, more frantic. They touched, did you see? Impossible. She's just an omega. No alpha could, no alpha would. The council roared louder, desperation edging their fury. Alpha King, this is a disgrace. An omega cannot sit at your side. She is blind, cursed, do not let her defile the throne. She must be removed before the prophecy. Their words choked off as Darius's voice rose again. Low. Even. Deadly. Then perhaps you misunderstand the throne. The hall went still. No one moved. No one dared. The words rang out, heavy as stone, reshaping the very air. For the first time in her life, Lyra sat in silence that did not mock her. Silence that trembled with fear not of her, but of the man who had claimed her presence without apology. Her body shook, not from weakness now, but from the weight of something vast, something terrifying, something that clawed at her chest and whispered of destiny she had never asked for. And beside her, the Alpha King remained unmoving, his aura pressed against her like a shield. Not saving her. Not condemning her. Simply keeping her there. And for the first time, she wondered if her blindness had hidden her from truths the rest of the world could not see. The hall still echoed with the Alpha King's words, yet Lyra's heart was no longer in the room. Her body sat stiffly by the throne, every nerve alert, every instinct screaming danger, yet her mind, her fragile, battered mind, slipped into memories she could not stop. Memories she had buried, locked away, starved of air. And yet, Darius's presence, the sheer weight of him beside her, the shock of his protection, ripped those old wounds open. She had been 7 when the whispers first began. Too young to understand cruelty, yet old enough to feel it. Blind, the children said, their voices sharp as stones. Broken. Wrong. She remembered clutching the hem of her tunic, little fingers trembling, while the other pups raced ahead through the training fields. She couldn't see the games they played, couldn't follow their running shadows, but she heard the way they laughed when she stumbled. And worse, she heard the silence of the adults, elders who turned their faces away as though shame were contagious. At 12, the rejection burned deeper. She had found herself trembling with excitement, her wolf stirring inside her for the first time when she sensed him, her destined mate. His scent had lit up every corner of her soul, a promise woven into her blood. She had stepped forward, heart hammering, lips parting with wonder. But his voice had been cold as ice. "Not you." One slash of words, crueler than claws. "I won't bind myself to a blind Omega." The bond had snapped before it could form, leaving her spirit raw and bleeding. She remembered collapsing to the ground, her cries muffled against the dirt. The rejection didn't just break her, it branded her, marked her as unwanted, cursed. And then the exile. That memory was sharper than all the rest, carved into her bones. She had been 17. Her sister, beloved and trusted, had stood in the council's circle and pointed to her. "She is dangerous. She is not one of us." Betrayal dripped from her sister's voice like venom. The elders had nodded. The decree was swift. She was cast out, sent stumbling into the cold night with nothing but the echo of her sister's triumph ringing in her ears. She remembered clutching the trees, whispering into the dark, "Why? Why would you do this to me?" No answer came, only the growl of beasts circling in the distance. But worse than the rejection, worse than the betrayal, was the fire. The first time it had come, she had been alone in the woods, her body shaking with fury and grief. She had screamed, and her fingertips had lit like torches, flames licking her skin without burning. She remembered staring, horrified, as the fire coiled and danced at her command, spilling her secrets into the night sky. It had felt like power, but power she could not afford. Power that would condemn her if the pack ever saw. So she hid it, buried it, smothered every spark. Because fire in an Omega was not a gift. It was a curse. Now, seated by the throne of the most feared Alpha King in the land, those memories pressed against her chest like an iron weight. She could almost feel the fire stirring again, tiny embers twitching beneath her skin. Her hands curled tightly into her lap, nails biting into her palms as she fought the tremor. Not now. Not here. If anyone saw, if he saw. And yet, Darius's presence quieted the storm. His aura, dark and commanding, pressed against her like a shield, smothering the voices of the crowd, anchoring her to the moment. She could sense his strength beside her, steady, unyielding, vast. Where others had mocked, he had silenced. Where others had condemned, he had protected. And that contradiction sliced her in two. Why? The question clawed at her. Why protect me? What do you want from me? Her mistrust ran deep, tangled with every wound of her past. She had learned long ago that kindness was never free, that every hand extended to her was only waiting to close into a fist. And yet, his voice, calm, controlled, dangerous, echoed in her head. Remain seated. Her chest tightened. She hated herself for the flicker of warmth those words brought. For the tiny, foolish thread of safety she felt beneath his shadow. She wanted to scream at herself, "Don't believe it, don't lean into it, don't let him close." But her heart, treacherous and aching, whispered back, "Maybe this time is different." She shifted slightly, feeling the brush of his presence against her arm. Just inches separated them, yet it felt like a chasm and a tether all at once. When his hand had brushed hers earlier, just for a moment, just an accident, lightning had surged through her, searing straight to her bones. She had felt the spark of something raw, something undeniable. And that terrified her more than exile, more than rejection, more than the fire itself. Because what if he saw through her? What if the Alpha King knew not only her blindness, not only her shame, but the secret she carried in her blood? What if he already knew, and that was why he had chosen to protect her? The thought made her pulse stutter, her breath shallow. Around her, the hall buzzed with tension, elders hissing, whispers rattling, eyes burning holes into her fragile frame. But inside her chest, a different war raged. The war between her fear and her longing. The war between her mistrust and her need to believe in something, someone. And so she sat, spine stiff, fingers trembling, the ghost of fire burning at her fingertips. Her memories tangled with her present, pain blending with possibility. Every second beside him felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath her. And yet, even in the chaos, she felt the impossible, the faintest promise that maybe she wasn't falling alone. The hall could not contain what had been unleashed. Whispers clung to the air like smoke, curling around Lyra's ears, pressing into her skull until she could no longer tell if the words belonged to the pack or to the ghosts of her past. Blind, cursed, unwanted. They had called her all of it, and yet here she sat unmoved, unbroken, beside the throne. And then Darius rose. The scrape of his chair against stone silenced even the most venomous elder. His height alone commanded stillness, but it was not size that froze the room. It was his aura. Dark as stormlight, vast as a forest shadow, heavy with a kind of patience that terrified more than rage ever could. He extended one hand, not to strike her, not to drag her away, but to beckon. Come. The word was low, carved into the bones of the hall itself. It was not a command that demanded obedience, but a force that drew it. Her body trembled as though tethered, as though her blood recognized something her mind could not. Slowly, she stood, her legs unsteady, and placed her hand into his. The hall gasped. He did not flinch from her touch. Without explanation, he led her out of the chamber. Guards shifted but did not follow, even they seemed bound by an unseen law when the Alpha King chose silence. The great doors closed behind them, leaving the echo of confusion and fury sealed away. The night air struck her skin, cool and sharp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. His hand still held hers as he guided her down the torchlit path, away from the noise of the palace and into the heart of the forest. She wanted to ask where, why, how, but the words caught in her throat. Questions were fragile things in the grip of a man like him. The path widened into a clearing she had never dared to approach before. Stones rose in a great circle, weathered by centuries, etched with marks she could not see but could feel. The air here was thicker, heavier, pulsing with something older than wolves, older than kings. She shivered. Darius stopped in the center and turned to her. His voice carried not to her ears, but to something deeper. Touch the stone. Her breath faltered. Why? Because it will answer. Her hand shook as she lifted it, blind eyes straining as though they might pierce the dark if only for this moment. Her fingers brushed the cold surface of the nearest stone, and heat erupted beneath her skin. Symbols long dormant flared to life in blinding fire, their glow spilling across the circle, racing from stone to stone until the night itself seemed to burn. Elders who had followed at a distance cried out, some falling to their knees, others retreating as though the light might consume them. The circle sang. It was not a sound of voice, but of power, of ancient blood recognizing its vessel. And within the light, words carved themselves into the air, words carried from the mouths of the first wolf gods. The blind flame shall sit beside the king, binding light to shadow. Lyra's heart stuttered. Her breath broke. The fire at her fingertips flared uncontrollably, mirroring the stones, spilling her secret to the world. She tried to snatch her hand back, but the stone held her, heat wrapping around her wrist like a shackle. She shook her head violently. No, I am no savior. I am nothing. But the fire did not agree. It climbed her arms, not burning, only revealing. The elders cried out again, some in awe, some in horror. She could feel their stares digging into her back, their voices splitting the night. It is her. The prophecy fulfilled. Impossible, an omega cannot be chosen. She is a curse, not a blessing. The circle roared with conflict, ancient power colliding with present fear. Her knees buckled, and she nearly collapsed, but Darius was there, always there, his hand closing around her wrist, steadying her as though even fire itself obeyed him. His voice was calm, colder than winter. Enough. The elders froze, silenced by the single word. His gaze swept across them, sharp and unrelenting. You speak as though prophecy is yours to command. It is not. It speaks, and we listen. Lyra trembled, her body aching with the weight of fire and fate. Her mind screamed with denial, every wound she had ever suffered clawing back to the surface. They mocked me. They rejected me. They cast me out. How can I be the one your gods choose? Her voice broke. I don't want this. I don't believe this. I am not what you think. But even as she said it, the stone pulsed beneath her palm, and the fire danced higher, casting her shadow long and fierce against the circle. Darius's eyes did not leave her. Whether you want it or not does not matter. Destiny rarely waits for belief. Her chest tightened. The fire within her clashed with the hollow pit of self-loathing, tearing her in two. One side whispered that she was cursed, unworthy, broken. The other side whispered that maybe, just maybe, she was more. That her blindness was not weakness, that the flames were not punishment, but purpose. And yet, purpose felt like chains. As the symbols burned brighter, fragments of ancient memory pressed against her mind, not hers, but the wolves of old. She saw the wars of the first packs, the gods descending in fury, the world split between shadow and light. She felt their desperation, their prayers for a savior who would bind the broken halves. And then she saw herself, her face, her fire, her blindness, etched in their prophecy. No, the word tore from her lips. I don't want to be her. Darius's hand pressed firmer against her wrist, grounding her. Then fight it. Deny it. But it will still follow you. It will burn in you until you either break or become. Her tears slipped soundless down her cheeks. Around her, the elders argued, divided into worship and fury. Some bowed, calling her chosen. Others hissed, vowing she was a danger. The split was raw, jagged, and widening. But the fire did not care. The prophecy did not bend. And so Lyra stood at the center of it all, blind eyes lifted to the flames she could not see, heartbreaking under the weight of a destiny she did not ask for, trembling in the grip of the Alpha King whose voice was the only thing holding her together. The night air quivered with unspoken truth. The myth had awakened. And she could not run from it anymore. The circle still burned with the light of prophecy when the air split with another voice, sharp, mocking, laced with venom. Lies. The word fell like a stone into water, sending ripples of unease across the gathered wolves. From the shadows of the trees, figures emerged broad-shouldered, armored with arrogance, the crest of another pack stitched into their cloaks. At their front walked a man taller even than most alphas, his stride filled with the easy cruelty of someone who had never once been denied. Alpha Kill. His smile was jagged, a predator's delight at the scent of blood in the air. His wolves fanned out behind him, their eyes glinting, their postures ready for war. He stopped at the edge of the glowing stones, sneer fixed on his lips as his gaze swept over Lyra. You dare stain the circle with this farce? A blind Omega? Chosen? The gods do not mock us so cheaply. Gasps scattered like sparks. The elders turned, some with relief at his words, others with dread. Kale's voice grew louder, feeding on the unease. This is no prophecy. This is witchcraft. She has ensnared you, Darius, twisted your mind as surely as she twisted the flames. Lyra's chest tightened, each word a blade sliding between her ribs. Bewitching. Fraud. She had heard those words before, in whispers, in jeers, in the cruel mutters of wolves who believed her blindness was a curse given shape. But spoken here, before the circle, they threatened not only her dignity, but her life. Darius did not move. He stood rooted beside her, shoulders squared, his hand still braced at her wrist. His silence was not weakness, it was the warning before a storm. But Kale pressed on, emboldened. Do you not see? She is dangerous. She is cursed. She will tear this pack apart. You would risk your throne, your people, your very bloodline for a blind girl who cannot even see the world she claims she will save. The words ignited the crowd. Shouts broke out, wolves turning on each other with snarls and accusations. Some called for her protection. Others cried for her death. The circle shook, not from prophecy now, but from the breaking of unity. And then the first wolf shifted. It was not a conscious choice, it was the crack of instinct under too much strain. For burst through skin, bone realigned, a guttural snarl shattered the night. Another followed, then another, until chaos roared alive. Claws tore into earth, teeth bared, growls vibrating the air. Lyra staggered back, blind eyes useless in the storm of bodies colliding around her. The scent of blood hit her nose first, sharp, coppery, thick. Her heart thundered, her breath fractured. She wanted to run, but the circle trapped her in place, the fire licking at her arms as though tethering her to fate. Kale lunged forward, half-shifted, his eyes feral gold. He pointed a clawed hand at her. There. The witch. Kill her before she consumes us all. The world blurred. Wolves clashed, elders screamed, the sacred circle became a battlefield. Someone slammed into Lyra's shoulder, sending her spinning to the ground. Pain jolted up her side, dirt grinding into her palms. She gasped, searching, scrambling, but the sounds of combat drowned every thought. A growl ripped so close to her ear that she froze, body rigid. Hot breath fanned across her cheek. A wolf stood over her, its teeth bared, its hunger radiating. She could smell the rage in its fur, taste the intent in its snarl. This was the end again, discarded, destroyed, nothing. But then another shadow fell. Darius. He moved like lightning, his form shifting mid-leap, fur erupting across his body, bones twisting into his wolf form. He struck the attacker with a force that shook the ground. The enemy wolf yelped, collapsing beneath him, silenced by the crushing weight of the Alpha King's jaws. Blood sprayed the earth. Silence rippled for a heartbeat. And then the chaos surged louder. Lyra struggled to rise, her hands trembling, her body shaking. She could feel the air tearing around her as wolves collided, the crack of bones, the ripping of flesh. Every sound was magnified, pressing into her skull until she thought she would split apart. She tried to crawl, tried to escape the circle of death, but another wolf lunged. She screamed. And again Darius was there. His body collided with hers, shielding her beneath the curve of his massive wolf form. His fur pressed against her skin, warm, grounding. His growl thundered over her head, shaking her bones. He did not move. He would not move. He was a wall between her and the teeth of the world. Bewitched. Kale shouted above the din, "Look at him, already enslaved. He defends her as though she is his mate." The words cut sharper than claws. Lyra's breath stopped. His mate? The claim was poison and temptation both. Around them, the council roared with outrage. An Omega cannot stand beside the throne. She is a danger to us all. The prophecy is false. The fight was no longer only claws and blood, it was words sharpened into weapons, truths bent into betrayals. Pacts that had once bowed in unity now splintered into factions, the air alive with the tearing of loyalties. Lyra's chest heaved. Every part of her wanted to crawl away, to vanish into the night, to let them fight until they forgot her. But something else burned in her gut, hotter than fear, fiercer than shame. I will not be discarded again. The vow rose like a flame in her chest. Not this time. Not by them. Not by fate. She would not run. She would not kneel. She would not vanish into the shadows they built for her. The vow was silent, but it pulsed louder than the battle itself. And though the world fought back with teeth and fury, though Kale's laughter cut through the night like a blade, though the council twisted destiny into thread, Lyra's heart refused to break. She rose, trembling, blood on her skin, prophecy burning at her fingertips. And for the first time, she stood not as the blind Omega they despised, but as the flame they could no longer deny. The night swallowed the noise of battle behind them. The forest stretched silent, broken only by the uneven rhythm of their footsteps and the low growl that still rumbled in Darius's chest as though the fight clung to his bones. Lyra leaned into his arm, her body weak from running, from terror, from the weight of prophecy pressing like iron against her ribs. When the trees parted, a cave revealed itself, half hidden by vines, its mouth shadowed, but inside it breathed with the cool stillness of stone. Darius guided her in, his touch firm at her elbow, his movements precise, as if every step had been chosen for her safety long before she ever walked it. The air was cooler here, touched with damp earth and faint moss. The chaos of the circle seemed impossibly distant, like a nightmare already fading. Yet her heart refused to slow. Darius stopped only when they reached the deeper hollow of the cave, where moonlight spilled in a narrow beam through a crack in the stone. He lowered her gently onto a smooth outcropping, his hand lingering longer than necessary, as if reluctant to let her go. For a moment neither spoke. Their breathing filled the silence, hers quick, uneven, his steady, heavy, carrying the weight of a storm barely restrained. The cave pulsed with the quiet rhythm of their hearts, two beats that faltered, searching for each other. Finally, his voice broke the silence. Low, rough, scraped raw by truth. You should not be here. Her lips parted, the words stinging though she knew he meant them as warning, not rejection. I didn't choose this. Her voice cracked on the last word. She forced her hands together in her lap, fingers knotting tightly. I never asked to be the flame. I never wanted it. Darius's shadow shifted as he crouched before her, the dim light grazing the scar that slashed across his jaw, running jagged down his throat. She reached for it before she could stop herself, her fingertips hovering in the space between them. What happened to you? She whispered. For the first time, hesitation broke his mask. His eyes flicked away, as though the cave walls themselves might shield him from the question. A betrayal, he said finally. Each word was measured, heavy. One I should have seen. One that left me with this. His hand ghosted over the scar, and with nothing else but the throne. Her breath trembled out. She imagined him then, younger, vulnerable, trusting. Imagined the pain that had carved itself into his flesh, into the stone of his voice. Silence fell again, not empty but weighted with the raw edge of unspoken truths. She swallowed hard. I'm afraid of myself. His gaze snapped back to her, sharp, piercing. The fire, she continued, her voice barely more than a whisper. It isn't just a mark of prophecy. It burns in me. Sometimes I feel it's not power at all, it's destruction, waiting to slip free. I'm blind, but I can feel it glowing under my skin. And I don't know if I'll lose myself to it. Her throat tightened. It frightens me more than the darkness ever has. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his hand lifted, slow enough that she could feel the air shift before his fingertips brushed the back of hers. The touch was delicate, as though he feared she might vanish if he pressed too hard. You are not destruction, he murmured. His thumb traced her knuckles, a ghost of contact, grounding her even as it set her pulse racing. You are fire. And fire does not exist to be feared. It exists to be carried. To warm. To fight the dark. Her breath hitched. His words sank deeper than any comfort ever had, finding the hollow places inside her and filling them with something she dared not name. She tilted her head, blind eyes seeking him in the shadows. Why are you doing this? Why stand by me when it would be easier to cast me away? His hand stilled on hers, but he did not pull away. His voice was low, rough, pulled from a place he rarely let anyone see. Because I see you. Her heart stumbled. I see you, Lyra, he said again, firmer now, as though carving the truth into stone. All of you. The scars they gave you. The fire you hide. The courage you don't know you have. You are not nothing. You never were. Her lips trembled, caught between disbelief and the aching desire to believe. The silence between them stretched, but it was no longer hollow. It throbbed with something fragile, something dangerous. Their fingers lingered together, brushing, daring, as though the bond itself pulled them closer. The moonlight painted their faces in pale silver, the cave narrowing until it felt as though the world existed only here, only now, only them. Her heartbeat thundered, echoing against the stone walls. His was slower, deeper, but each beat aligned, syncing with hers until the cave seemed to hum with their rhythm. Their faces drew closer, hesitant, searching. His breath warmed her lips, her trembling hand lifted, grazing the rough line of his scar. The air between them quivered with the almost of a kiss. But he stopped, his forehead leaning against hers instead, his voice a whisper so close it melted into her skin. Trust me or leave. The words sank like stone into her chest. A choice. Not a command, not a threat, but a door only she could step through. Her body quivered, caught between fear and longing. She could flee, run into the night, pretend none of this bound her. Or she could stay, risk everything, and trust the man whose hand burned steady against hers, whose voice had spoken her worth when no one else ever had. The silence held, fragile, infinite. Her lips parted, her breath caught, and for the first time in her life, she felt the weight of choice settle not as a curse, but as a promise. The cave had felt eternal, a sealed world carved just for them, where silence breathed like a vow and her choice trembled on the cusp of surrender. But dawn crept closer, dragging duty with it. The ritual waited. The circle of wolves would not dissolve because two hearts had whispered truths in the shadows. Darius rose first, his body a dark line against the pale silver slit of moonlight. He extended his hand, not as command, but as invitation. She placed her fingers into his palm, trembling, yet steadying in his hold. The warmth of his skin lingered even as they stepped back into the night, into the forest, into the weight of waiting eyes. By the time they reached the stone clearing, the council had gathered, voices already churning like a storm behind closed lips. Torches lined the ring, their flames snapping against the cool air, shadows leaping across carved runes and the faces of wolves who had been waiting, restless, suspicious. The elder at the center raised his staff. "The girl has returned. The flame child stands before us." Whispers hissed through the circle. Some fearful, some sharp with disdain. Lyra kept her chin high, though every muscle inside her quivered. She could feel the fire stir beneath her skin, restless, hungry, alive. Darius's hand brushed hers in quiet reassurance, but his jaw was set, his gaze sweeping the crowd with a predator's calculation. And then it began. From the far edge of the ring, a voice cut through, bright with venom. "She is no chosen. She is corruption." The crowd turned. A tall wolf stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of a hunter who has cornered prey. Regan, his rival. His smile was a blade unsheathed. "She carries fire, yes. But do you know from where she came? Do you know whose blood runs through her veins?" He circled the ring slowly, his words stretching, taunting, savoring each syllable. "She is not the child of prophecy. She is the spawn of a rogue." Gasps broke like shattered glass. The word hung heavy, poison in the air. Rogue. A curse darker than exile, a brand worse than death. Rogues were disease. Outcasts who slaughtered without allegiance. Wolves who abandoned bond and packed to devour their own. Lyra's breath froze in her lungs. She wanted to deny it, but the roots of memory coiled tight. The unanswered questions of her lineage. The silence in every story told of her parents. She felt the crowd's eyes slice into her, carving her apart. Regan's voice climbed, triumphant. "You have worshipped a lie. The prophecy said fire would come, but fire does not always warm. Fire consumes. Fire destroys. This girl is not salvation. She is doom." The circle erupted. Voices layered over voices, accusations hurled like stones. "She cannot be trusted. Rogue blood will betray. The prophecy twists. Banish her. Kill her before the flame burns us all." Lyra's knees threatened to buckle beneath the weight. She sought Darius, her breath clawing out. His presence had been her anchor, his voice the only truth she had believed. She searched for him now, desperate, blind eyes reaching through the clamor. But he was silent. The crowd demanded, pleaded, shouted for judgment, and he, her protector, her bond, the man who had whispered, "I see you," hesitated. The silence was louder than any blade. Her chest constricted, each heartbeat splintering. His stillness cut deeper than the crowd's venom. 1,000 daggers could not have pierced her as cleanly as his pause. She staggered back. You don't believe them." Her voice cracked, shaking, raw. Darius's throat worked, words forming, failing. His jaw tightened, his hand clenched at his side. A king should have spoken. A mate should have denied. But hesitation lingered like ash on his tongue, and that hesitation was enough. The betrayal was not in his words, but in his silence. Her heart tore open. All the warmth of the cave, all the fragile threads of trust, all the promises unspoken, they shattered in a single breath. The fire inside her surged. Her chest burned, silver light bleeding through her skin, crackling along her arms, threading her veins like molten chains. Wolves recoiled, fear snapping across the circle as the glow seared brighter, brighter, until her body was wrapped in flames not red, not gold, but silver. Flames no one had seen before, flames that burned without heat yet carried terror in every flicker. "Monster," someone whispered. "She will consume us all," another spat. The air quaked with panic. Growls, cries, the shuffling of paws against stone. Lyra's breath came in ragged gasps. She couldn't control it. The flames burst, streaming outward in arcs that licked the torches, smothered shadows, sent wolves staggering back in terror. Her vision was a blind blur of light and fire, her skin both burning and numb. Darius's voice cut through the chaos. "Lyra." But she couldn't hear him. Or wouldn't. His silence still echoed louder than his plea. The trust she had given, the bond she had almost surrendered to, it cracked underfoot like shattered glass. A cry ripped from her throat, half human, half wolf, soaked in agony. The council's staff struck stone. "Contain her." But none dared. The flames whipped higher, surging wild, bending with her pain, with her rage, with her despair. The crowd fell back, their courage dissolving beneath the silver fire. Wolves who had never cowered, who had stood against war and bloodshed, now shrank from her. From what she was. From what they claimed she had always been. Her breath broke into sobs, each one spilling more flame into the night. The prophecy twisted around her like a chain she could not shake. Doom, they called her. Curse, they named her. Even the man who had seen her, truly seen her, had faltered when the moment demanded he stand. Her choice became clear. Not trust. Not surrender. Escape. The fire erupted one last time, a blinding wave of silver light that split the air, forcing wolves to shield their eyes, to stagger back in fear. And in the confusion, she ran. Her feet struck stone, struck soil, struck root and earth as she tore through the night, blind but guided by the pulse of flame burning inside her. Her tears scorched her cheeks, lost in the wind of her flight. Branches clawed at her arms, stones bit her soles, but nothing slowed her. She carried the fire with her, a curse, a weapon, a wound she could not lay down. Behind her, the council's voices rose in chaos. Behind her, Darius's silence still bled like a blade in her chest. And the night swallowed her whole. The forest had swallowed her, but the forest could not silence what she carried inside. Lyra's flight left the sacred grounds behind, yet her heart still pounded with the echo of voices branding her as curse, doom, monster. The word rogue burned sharper than flame, more permanent than scar. And Darius's silence, his single moment of hesitation, kept replaying, a wound that did not clot. She stumbled through root and shadow, lungs raw, arms streaked with scratches, her dress torn by branches that reached for her like claws. Every breath felt like betrayal pressed deeper into her chest. Her fire still lingered beneath her skin, smoldering in her veins, aching to burst free again. She clenched her fists, trying to contain it, trying to convince herself she still controlled something when everything else had slipped away. But then, a howl ripped the night apart. Not Darius's. Not her pack. The sound was jagged, foreign, laced with bloodlust and hunger. Lyra froze, heart slamming against her ribs. The air shifted, the forest no longer held the familiar sense of pine and stone, but the acrid stench of foreign wolves. Enemy pack. Her blind eyes could not map the shapes rushing through the undergrowth, but she felt them. Claws scraping soil, bodies lunging low, the rhythm of a hunt that had already chosen its prey. The sacred grounds had not only been fractured by prophecy, they had been invaded. And innocent wolves, her pack, even those who mocked her, were still there. The thought sliced through her chest sharper than any claw. She had every reason to keep running, to vanish into the dark, to let them reap what they had sown. But the bond of pack, of blood, of home, of something deeper than cruelty, still held her heart captive. No matter how they had treated her, they were hers. And they would die without her. Her steps faltered. She turned back. The night behind her erupted in chaos. Howls clashed, paws thundered, teeth tore into flesh. The invaders had breached the circle. The air shook with roars, yelps, screams. The scent of blood thickened, choking, metallic. Lyra's fire responded, rising up her throat, searing down her arms. The flames trembled just beneath her skin, begging for release, begging to make her choice final. She sucked in a breath that felt like smoke and ash. And she ran, not away this time, but toward the chaos. Her body burned as she tore through the trees, the heat radiating outward with each stride. Silver sparks flickered from her fingertips, trailing behind her like falling stars. The ancestors' whispers began, faint but insistent, threading into her thoughts. Flame is not curse. Flame is bond. Flame is the truth they feared to see. She broke from the tree-line into the clearing, and the world had become a battlefield. Wolves collided in a frenzy of fur and fawn, the earth soaked with blood. The sacred stones glowed faintly beneath trampling paws, their ancient runes disturbed by violence they had not seen in centuries. Her pack was falling. An elder's cry pierced the night as he was dragged down by 2 foreign wolves. A mother shielded her pup with her body as a rogue's claws raked her side. Young warriors fought with desperation, their movements clumsy, untrained against seasoned killers. And at the center, Regan stood, towering, his eyes bright with triumph. He had not just exposed her, he had orchestrated this. He had called in an enemy pack to break them when they were weakest, when prophecy and division had already split their unity. Lyra's chest ignited. Flames burst outward, swallowing her body in a cocoon of silver fire. The heat licked the air but did not burn her skin. Her hair whipped wildly, her blind eyes glowing white with light brighter than torches. The ground beneath her feet trembled, the runes carved into the circle flaring to life as if her flames had awoken something long buried. The battle paused. For a breath, both sides froze, staring at the impossible sight of a blind Omega standing ablaze in silver fire. Wolves stumbled back, some whimpering, some growling low in fear. Even the enemy's bravest faltered. Regan snarled. "See? She brings ruin." But her voice cut through the chaos, clear, sharp, alive with power that was no longer just pain. "I am not your curse. I am not your sacrifice. I am flame, and I burn for this pack." The words thundered, carried by power she did not fully understand, but believed with every shard of her heart. The fire leapt from her hands, a wave that slammed into the enemy wolves, forcing them back. Their howls broke as the silver flames singed their fur without consuming them, scorching spirit, not flesh. Wolves collapsed to the ground, trembling as if her fire had stripped them bare. Her pack gasped. Shock rippled through them, awe-threaded with fear. But Lyra did not stop. The ancestors' voices rose inside her, no longer whispers but a chorus, fierce and unyielding. "Child of flame, hold nothing back. You are not broken. You are not less. You are ours." She raised her arms, and the fire obeyed. Arcs of silver flame streaked across the battlefield, striking with precision, burning ropes that bound captured wolves, shielding pups from lunges, blinding enemies with bursts of light. The earth itself seemed to respond. Stones cracked, runes glowed, the air thickened with energy older than time. Wolves staggered, unable to fight beneath the weight of it. The sacred grounds were awake, answering her. And then her gaze, blind, yet sharper than sight, locked on Regan. He stood tall, fury boiling, his body trembling with the urge to shift. His voice rang out, desperate, defiant. "You think fire makes you queen? You think prophecy bends for a blind girl?" His body contorted, bones snapping, fur ripping through skin until the monstrous form of his wolf loomed, massive and dark, scarred and brutal. His roar shook the air. The rival alpha lunged. Lyra's heart hammered, but she did not step back. The flames swelled higher, cloaking her like armor, her feet planted firm on sacred soil that pulsed beneath her. She let go of the last of her fear, of the last of her doubt, and surrendered wholly to what she was. Silver fire exploded outward, clashing with the brute force of his attack. The impact shook the ground, the stones, the trees. Wolves cried out as light engulfed them all. This was no longer her running, no longer her hiding. This was her claiming. She was the blind flame. She was not their curse. She was not their victim. She was power. And the world would never forget it. The clearing smoldered with the aftermath of battle. Smoke curled in silver threads from the charred soil where her fire had kissed the earth. Wolves lay scattered, some groaning in pain, others too afraid to rise. The sacred stones pulsed faintly, their light ebbing as though they had witnessed more than even their ancient weight was meant to hold. And at the center stood Lyra. Blood streaked her arm, her dress torn to ribbons, her hair wild with ash and flame. Yet her spine was straight, her chin unbowed. Her blind eyes, glowing faintly with silver light, stared into nothing yet pierced into everyone. She was the vision of ruin and salvation braided into one, fragile and unstoppable all at once. The silence stretched heavy. No one dared breathe too loud. Even the night itself seemed to wait. Her chest rose and fell, every inhale sharp, every exhale tasting of iron and smoke. She had given everything in the firestorm, yet still, she stood. She had defied death, defied prophecy's twisted chains, defied even her own terror. But the whispers began again, soft, slithering through the silence. Too dangerous. She'll burn us all. She saved us. She's the prophecy come to life. No, she's the curse reborn. Each word struck her, slicing open fresh wounds inside her chest. Their gratitude was tangled in their fear. Their awe was poisoned by suspicion. She felt it pressing in on her from all sides, the weight of being too much and never enough, of being miracle and monster in the same breath. And then the narrator's voice curved low, intimate, trembling with the question that clawed into every heart watching her. Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? The words echoed like a challenge, wrapping the audience into the choice the pack itself wrestled with. Lyra's hands curled into fists, the last sparks of her flames hissing against her palms. She wanted to scream, to demand their trust, to beg for their belief. But she said nothing. She had learned what their voices were worth. Only her fire had spoken true. Still, her heart ached. Somewhere in the crowd, Darius watched her, his silence heavier than any accusation. He had shielded her, fought beside her, but when the council's judgment had mattered, when her heart had needed his voice, he had faltered. And that hesitation still stood between them like a blade. Her body trembled, not with fear now, but with the weight of everything she carried. Her blindness, her fire, her betrayal, her survival. She could not be only theirs. She could not be only his. She was flame, and flame answered to no master. The narrator's tone shifted, sharp and cutting through the night like a final strike. Is she the savior, or the spark of ruin? The pack stared at her, torn between reverence and dread. Some lowered their heads in reluctant awe, while others bared teeth, trembling with fear disguised as hate. No one moved closer. No one dared touch her. Lyra stood bloodied but unbroken, a question written in fire across her skin. And then the whisper curved soft, like an ember pressed to the listener's heart. If this story burned in your heart, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Because here, love and destiny always find their flame. The fire in her hands dimmed. The clearing held its breath. The choice was no longer just hers. The night settled uneasy. The battle had ended, but no peace followed. Wolves limped, elders argued in hushed tones, and the sacred stones glowed faintly with cracks that had not been there before. The air felt fractured, as if something greater had stirred beneath the soil, waiting to rise. Lyra turned slowly, her blind eyes lifted toward the sky. The moon, pale and bruised with shadow, seemed to watch her as much as the pack did. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her fire still hummed beneath her skin, restless, alive. She was no longer running, no longer hiding. Yet she knew the path ahead had only grown darker. Darius stepped forward at last. His boots scraped against stone, his aura heavy with conflict. He stopped just short of her flame-lit shadow, his voice low, ragged, torn between fear and reverence. "This changes everything," he said. But before she could answer, Before the pack could take a step toward her or away from her, the earth itself shivered. A low rumble rolled beneath their feet, rattling the stones, sending cracks deeper into the ground. The air chilled. And then, from the shadows of the treeline, a voice whispered. Not human. Not wolf. Something older. Something darker. She is not the only one. The words slithered like smoke, curling around every ear, coiling into every heart. Wolves flinched, some snarling, some backing away in terror. The scent of decay drifted with the whisper, as though the forest itself exhaled rot. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The flames at her fingertips flickered, unsure, as if even fire hesitated. The voice came again, deeper this time, heavy with promise and threat. The true alpha hasn't risen yet. The ground split, a thin crack running through the center of the circle, glowing faintly with dark light. The moon above dimmed, a shadow creeping across its face. And then silence. Every wolf froze. Every heart pounded. Every breath waited. The screen of night seemed to fold in, the edges of the world drawing tighter, darker. Lyra stood bloodied, trembling, her flames guttering low yet still alive. She had claimed herself, but the shadow had claimed the night. The narrator's voice lowered, haunting, leaving the audience suspended in the space between dread and hunger for more. This isn't over. The heartbeat of the earth pulsed once. Twice. And then the world fell black.